Secret mission to the moon. I work for NASA in a capacity that deals with obtaining and allocating funding for individual missions, both those that the public knows about and those that they don't. I basically have to know some details to help create the cover stories and get funding, along with the real dollar costs of any real/secret missions NASA is engaged in, so funds can be diverted to the right place at the right time. Usually, that means coming up with bullshit science missions at the last minute to get money in order to keep actual missions going that have gone over budget. I can't tell you everything, but let's just say there's a reason the JWST took so long to actually happen, kept being delayed and needing more money. That was a good running excuse that made my job easier because so many people wanted to see it actually happen as it got closer and closer. I've never posted on the site before, but the latest shit going on, quite frankly, has me pretty rattled. A while back, I was told by a supervisor that I'd have to come up with justification for funding to send a secret mission back to the Apollo 17 landing site on the moon. That's kinda weird. I of course wondered why they'd go back there, but it's not too far out of the ordinary in terms of shit we're asked to divert funding for, etc., so I never thought much about that at the time. It was a pretty expensive project though, so it did occupy a lot of my work time later. Based on the parameters, rumors, and deduction, I found out the Chinese were pissed at the US about something, and there was still evidence of it at the landing site. I heard some real crazy shit I have trouble believing, but the problem is that the Chinese are sending their own mission, so we have to beat them there and extract some kind of materials, while preferably leaving no trace that the site was ever tampered with. Does anyone know if something was off with Apollo 17 in particular? Do you have any evidence of anything amiss? What are the Chinese looking for? I know secret things. What do you guys know? I don't know shit really. Not exactly what I'm saying/asking, but I understand your frustration. I just know a lot of you guys pick up on details and watch a lot of shit, like that channel with those old fucks who go on about film in a vacuum. They might not be right about everything, but it's amazing how often they get something right. Like, I can tell you that just about every time a rocket blows up on the pad during liftoff or falls into the ocean, that is me and my department moving money. Like, you think NASA has to rebuild not only the rocket and the payload, but the payload, expensive satellite or whatever, has been removed Capricorn 1 style at the last minute. Although it doesn't have to be literally the last minute, in the case of an unmanned mission of course. It's basically more financially advantageous for us to just strip shit down, write it off, and then carry on, rather than let an expensive mission go ahead as planned, especially if it was a bullshit science mission in the first place. What amazing scientific breakthroughs have you gotten from NASA lately? Think about it, there's really nothing to learn, which is why space telescopes are our go-to lately. I do know what I'm talking about. I'm just looking for some missing pieces, because I'm not personally that familiar with the older Apollo missions, and I know you guys have spent a lot of time analyzing and talking about them. Stop trying to pass off your lies as real-life events. What next? Are you gonna tell us the Mars rover is doing burnouts on Mars, like in the movie WALL-E? Give me a break. I could go into hundreds of reasons why this is extremely obvious bullshit, but instead, I'll just say that is not at all how NASA works in terms of funding, and hopefully just move on from there. If you're going to LARP, try to do even the slightest bit of research. Okay, fuck it, a Greentext. Secret mission to the moon. That requires a massive fucking rocket that can be seen for hundreds of miles. That can be tracked by every government in the world. That can be tracked by a ton of amateurs too, but it will be secret. You can't have a secret space launch, you fucking idiot. How do you think nuclear weapons don't get fired off every time a mission is launched and the initial burn is detected by every ICBM detector on the planet? Because you have to publicly tell others and book the sky traffic and find the correct route to not smash into other people's satellites and a billion other tiny little things that you didn't think about with your shitty LARP. Just fuck off, man. Fuck off with your crap fiction. Go and write it on a fan fiction site or talk to an AI role-playing or something. Just stop shitting up the board with this horseshit. I've read that the lander module was surrounded by ships and the astronauts were told to finish their mission series, take some rocks, and fuck off my lawn. might still be some evidence of that meeting lying around, and perhaps China is upset that they were fed bullshit by USG about it. They might want to destroy confidence in USG by exposing the moon landing cover-up to further discredit USG for Taiwan leverage. You don't know what you're even talking about. It's experts like you that make it so easy for people in my line of work. Well, there'd be no reason to go there and try to bring something back if they didn't even send anything at all, obviously. Yes, I do. It's you and your shitty LARP that didn't even bother to look up the extreme basics before writing your wall of horseshit that's wrong. I've been involved in this industry since before you were born and know exactly how realistic the idea of a secret launch is. Do you have any idea what a NUSA is and why it exists in a world of first strike capability? No, you don't, because you're a fucking idiot who can't even write a vaguely realistic LARP. Do you realize how much monitoring goes into a lunar landing just on an espionage level, let alone the massive bilateral cooperation that happens because the fucking Earth is a globe? Do you realize that NASA and CNSA have been looping around the Wolf Amendment for years, up to and including the Chang'e missions, and literally work together on 4? No, you don't, because you are a shitty fucking LARPer. Secret space launch, you absolute fucking idiot. Yeah, see that massive fucking rocket over there? Everyone just ignore that please, because it's a secret thing that only me and some schizos on a shitty forum know about. What do you mean every single person on Earth has the ability with a $100 piece of kit to track the exact positioning of lunar missions? Yeah, well it's a secret to them too. You stupid fucking moron. Fuck off. Apollo 17 and Nansen is an interesting topic. The astronauts seem to hint that something is there, and they hint that they have to hide it in their imagery. This may be something left by someone else that they simply do not want the Chinese looking at. Perhaps it is something that can be moved, and they're worried the Chinese will ship it back. I wonder how they knew about it in the first place, if indeed something were there. If anything, the funding would be used to get proposals regarding highly specific things on short notice by contracting NASA scientists to perform compartmentalized tasks that only when seen in total paint the full picture of what is actually being developed, but otherwise just appear to be highly specific and lucrative work. Get a bunch of top-tier scientists to solve every aspect of your problem on short notice, then use the actual black money to make it a reality. Interesting. I had no idea shills followed X-Threads so closely. OP said something, triggering a response. There is an archive thread from years back that circulates very rarely about Nephilim DNA /body/similar being buried on the moon, and somehow China found out about it before the mission. Hazy on the details, but again, you see the picture floating around every year or so. Either way, OP said some shit and triggered a legit response. I guess it doesn't matter, since the real science all happens with anti-grav tech and secret projects, hollowing out America, expecting us to die in the apocalypse anyway. No, but didn't you see the obvious NASA shill above, saying they could detect secret launches, so secret missions were impossible? I'm sure he was taking anti-grav and other tech into account too, right? I've read it. We all laugh about the shit at work, but we are often shocked at how much shit morons on X get right. It's fascinating, because we have no idea how a bunch of idiots actually figured out so much shit based on scant evidence. The hive mind is amazing when you really know how well it's scoring. Of course, a lot of crap too, but I need to come here to pick your brains to help figure out what's really going on. So first, NASA could not have fake shit because their enemies would have said something. But then, they are all working together so they wouldn't all be hiding rocket launches. I smell shill logic. Again, how do you people think ICBM launch detectors and other early warning systems work for space launches? Do you think China sees the first stage of an ICBM fire off, unscheduled on American soil, and just think, nah, it's probably just a secret lunar mission? How do you even have a secret lunar mission in a world where 10 plus countries have independent early warning systems and have to literally check with each other before launches to ensure that they don't smash into a satellite? None of this even mentioned the fact that a lunar mission requires a ground control crew of hundreds of people. Do you know those little desks that you see in films with somebody monitoring? That's not one person's job, generally. That's an entire department with one person doing live monitoring, who just didn't bother to mention that they worked on an active lunar mission. And this is just the extremely obvious stuff that zero IQ losers like the OP couldn't work out as very clearly wrong. There's much more intricate details if you know even 1% about how spaceflight works. Absolute fucking idiots here at times. Jesus Christ. NASA shell. I worked on ESA projects. Out of all the things that NASA care about and are willing to put their budget towards, telling schizos that they're idiots on an obscure internet forum probably is not on the top of the list. Anti-grav tech. Oh, for fuck's sake. No, mate. They did not need to use anti-grav tech to get to the moon instead of the SLS because they used their hidden teleportation tech to just walk there instead. Nice place. We'll take regular teleports to the hidden moon base in the space industry. The coffee there is decent. There are extremely old structures that were found on the moon. Buildings, monuments, things like that, from a past civilization. They don't know when or who or what put them there. Heard they have no idea just how old the structures are. They could be 1 billion years old. Maybe some higher-ups know what they are. But there was a past civilization there, and it's there now to be studied. You can't have a secret space launch, you fucking idiot. Which is why spy satellites can't exist, right? And why pick-related can't be doing God only knows what while you sing us back to sleep with your lullaby. I could go into hundreds of reasons why this is extremely obvious bullshit, but instead, I'll just latch onto this one thing that wasn't even said to strawman your whole claim, because I got 99 debunks, and what you actually said ain't one. Obvious NASA shell is obvious. Because lunar missions and LEO missions are completely different things with different requirements, you fucking idiot. Spy satellites. Spy satellites aren't secretly launched. Their position and capabilities are what are actually secret, which is exactly why countries have to declare to ensure the route is clear all the time. That's one of the major reasons why launch windows are a thing. Dealing with you utter morons and your stupid ideas on how spaceflight is achieved in reality is giving me a headache. The NASA budget allocation also doesn't work anything close to this either, but that's like step 2 of the problem. And you bunch of midwits can't even get off step 0. You genuinely believe instead that there is a secret NASA department, which is the highest possible security clearance, and one of those guys thought they'd post an X while making basic errors on how their fake job functions. You know, just for a laugh, while sharing this incredibly secret information. Again, you are fucking idiots. When asked if it was impossible to cross the Van Allen radiation belt, a Rothschild replied, of course. When asked if they had ever been to other planets, he replied by saying the question assumed other planets exist. They hold a suitcase nuke up there with the intent of a rather elaborate seismographic study, and when they flip the switch, nothing happened, and everybody is fascinated to find out why. Probably was an unanticipated void in a battery, or something full of normal air, and in a vacuum it popped, and so, no bang. Then everyone gets paranoid back home because any indication it won't go boom when the button is pressed is an all top national security incident, etc. Would have been kind of cool if it worked. Apollo 17 found orange volcanic soil, showing that the moon once had volcanism. There are other byproducts of volcanism that can be mined. Old lava tubes could serve as protective shelter for colonial structures, as well as potentially provide a source of ice water. When rocks melt, water in the rocks dissolves into the magma. As the magma rises toward the surface and cools, pressure decreases, crystals form, and the water is released as vapor, which under the moon's lack of atmosphere would have frozen as ice around, or as solid ice caps, sealing off the top of those tubes. Water is necessary, not just for drinking, but for rocket operation. Just the chance that there is water there makes it a primary target for further study and exploration. There, I did your job for you. Just spit on that thing and put your name on it. I worked at a psych hospital here in New Hampshire for a year. It was one of the worst jobs I've ever had, but it provided me with some pretty hosed up stories to tell. As you might imagine, places like psychiatric hospitals are pretty turbulent places, I was hired, despite my lack of psych training, because I was big and a little bit intimidating. They needed people like me on the adult and adolescent units, because these were very violent times. It was 1999, 9 months before Y2K, and only a few weeks before Columbine, so the lunatics were coming out of the woodwork. We had apocalypse freaks, people who swore they had psychic powers and the government was trying to kill them. We had a Columbine wannabe admitted once or twice a week. They were also some of the roughest, most violent patients that the hospital had ever hosted, so they needed people like me to sort of keep the peace and take violent people down so nurses would stop getting hurt. The kids liked me, so the hospital director put me on the adolescent unit a lot. The adolescent unit turned out to be home to a shitload of spooky stuff. I experienced a couple of them. After lights out, each hallway, boys' hall and girls' hall, was watched over by a counselor. I was sitting in a chair in the boys' hall. My job was to make sure no one was up and moving around, and that people were going to sleep. If I heard anyone talking, I was to shut them up. You can tell where this is going. I'm flipping through my book when I hear voices in one of the rooms. It's just muffled, but I have to get up and check it out anyway. I start to get nervous when I hear the voices coming from an empty room. It was a quiet week on the unit, and only half of the boys' bedrooms were occupied. I opened the door, expecting to find a couple of kids in there, since I heard 2 voices, but find an entirely empty room. The talking continued right up until the point when I opened the door. As soon as it opened, the talking stopped. I closed the door, go back to my chair, chilled right down to the bone. That was pretty creepy. I hear more talking, but decide that it can't be from that room, so I start going room to room. Everyone is out, like a light. The talking is still coming from that room. After my shift was over, I went out for a beer with the nurses and other counselors and told them about it. This was some sort of initiation for me, I guess. They talked about how everyone has had some sort of weird experience on the unit. It's like a rite of passage. I heard stories about the quiet room in the girls' hall. Sometimes, girls in the neighboring bedroom hear screaming and pounding on the walls when there's no one in the quiet room. I was told about the figure of a man that can be seen, and I did see him walking in the halls on the adult unit. You always catch him out of the corner of your eye, but when you turn to look at him fully, there is no one there. The head nurse told me about a child on the adolescent unit seeing someone hanging by a belt in their bathroom. The staff checked it out and calmed the hysterical kid, but found nothing. The kicker? A kid hung himself by a belt from the shower curtain rod a year prior. For this reason, breakaway curtain rods were now installed in each room, and no one was allowed to wear belts. A massive bloodstain was found on the floor of a girl's bedroom by a counselor once doing checks in the halls. She ran to get the staff, thinking someone bled to death on the floor. They all ran down to the room in rubber gloves, and everyone saw the stain. The girls occupying the room should have been in the gymnasium, and some of the staff went to find them. Like they should have been, both girls were in the gym, perfectly fine. When the nurses went back in the room, the stain was completely gone. When I was a kid, we lived in a fairly large house in the middle of Fort Collins. Nothing particularly weird happened in the house until my 7th birthday. On that day, I had dreamed of a little girl who died of some strange illness. In the dream, I was walking through this strange-looking hallway with a creepy floral pattern wallpaper. Anyway, I eventually turn into a room, and there is a bunch of people and a priest standing over a bed with a small girl laying in the bed. Everyone is crying and sobbing, and the priest is reading some stuff out of the Bible that he had in his hands. I walked up to the side of the bed and looked at the girl, and then at the man that was standing next to me. I looked up at his face, and he stared back at me and screamed, "Why, God? Why did you make her sick?" That scene has stuck in my mind so vividly that I could draw every feature on that man's face to this day. Anyway, after I had the dream, strange things started happening. Chairs would move around, not get stacked into a pyramid a la Poltergeist, Doors would open and close, and we would hear giggling, things like that. A few times we would come home, and every single cabinet door in the house would be wide open, with all of the contents of the cabinets pushed up to the front and stacked in perfect columns, labels out, mind you. Now, seeing that was pretty damn creepy when I was a kid. Also, one night, while I was having a particularly hard time sleeping, I opened my eyes to see a small girl, the same girl from my dream, dressed in a white gown, standing at the foot of my bed, smiling at me. I closed my eyes and quickly reopened them to see if the girl had gone away, but this time, she was extending her arm to me with something in her hand. At this point, I had no idea what to do, so I did what any 7-year-old would do. I quickly pulled the sheets over my head and curled up into a ball. I laid there for a second, thinking that I was just having a really messed up dream, but then I felt the bed compact as if someone had sat on it. At this point, I am shitting myself. I'm not sure why I thought it was a good idea to rip the covers off of me and quickly stand up, but I did anyway. The small girl had moved around to the side of my bed and was just sitting there, smiling at me. She reached into a pocket of her gown and pulled out a small trinket that looked like a small horse. She looked up at me and mouthed something, but I could not hear her. She extended her hand and offered the small horse to me. I just stood there, in my pajamas, in the middle of the bed, completely dumbfounded. Right as I was about to reach to get the horse from the little girl, the light flicked on in my room, promptly causing the little girl to look towards the door, then back at me. My dad had turned on the light and was looking at me strange. Then he noticed the little girl. His exact words were, "What the hell is going on in here? Who the hell are you, and why are you in my son's room?" After he finished his little outburst, the girl got up from my bed, smiled at me, and put the horse back in her pocket. I can't really describe what happened next, but she kind of half disappeared, half blended into the wall. Anyway, it creeped both my dad and myself out, and we spent the next week sneaking around the house together, trying to see her again. After the little bed incident, the little girl would start taking our stuff. Her favorite thing to do was to take the remote to the TV and hide it in the closet of my parents' room. Another one of the girl's favorite things to do was to take my toy trucks and send them rolling across the floor for hours. When we tried to take the trucks away and put them somewhere else, the trucks would be promptly back at the door, scooting along the floor. That's my little ghost story. We never saw the little girl again, nor did we ever find out who she is or what the little horse was. Got a few stories from being aboard an old sailing ship for half a year, as well as some about the weird people I've met working in the music industry. Here is a ship story to start. If y'all like it, I'll post more. Be me, 19, and want to travel. Apply for a deckhand position on old sailing vessel. Gonna skip the stories from the island I trained on for now, since that is another can of worms. Voyage going decent. Teaching elementary school kids about the boat and squids and shit. Pull night watch with the captain. Old ex-Navy fucker, so harsh, but a generally good guy. Start talking with him since night watch is boring as fuck. Nothing to do but stare at the water and drink coffee. Cap and I jaw about ghost stories, and he tells me that the ship that we're currently on is haunted. Tells me, ghost name is Rose. She was the mistress of a previous captain. Says she was caught by the old captain's wife, and the wife made the captain throw her overboard. Says Rose drowned, but her soul is stuck on the ship. Ask captain what kind of shit she gets up to. Says she tries to bother him a lot, opening the door to his cabin, pulls the sheets off his bunk, whispers in his ear when he sleeps. Obviously, she'll fuck with the lights and shit as well when it gets too calm or stormy. Cap finishes his story, and I decide to take a lap around the deck. So fucking bored. Suddenly, the coffee hits me all at once. Call of the wild. Desperately need to shit. Finally get there, and it's fucking occupied. Knock, and tell whoever is in there to get out. Groaning from inside the head. Damn, they must have to shit more than me. End up shitting over the side of the boat. Still gotta wipe. Walk back to head to get TP. Head is vacant. Wipe, and go back to meet the captain. Ask him who the fuck was in the head. Says he thought I was. Tell him what happened. Cap said nobody announced they were going above decks. Bring it up at crew muster. Nobody shat last night. Fucking Rose took a ghost shit. My face won. Alright, sailing and on here. Gonna dump the training and a couple more stories from the voyage. Be me. Headed to Ireland off the coast of New England for a crash course in sailing and navigation. Ireland used to be a granite mining settlement, so a couple ruins there to check out when we're not being drilled by instructors. First thing I see when I walk towards the bunkhouse I'm staying in is the town graveyard. Gotta be like 50 headstones there, so basically the whole town died on the island. Between drills and exercises, hear about the history from one of the mates. Apparently, granite mining in the 1700s sucked dick. Miners would get particles of granite in their lungs and bleed internally to death. Fucking brutal. On free time, go on a hike with a guy I made friends with, called Hunter. Deserves a post all on his own. The dude was strange as fuck. We check out all the ruins of the old mining shed around the island. Basically, just wooden beams and some rusted out winches and shit. Get back to the bunkhouse for lights out. Pass out immediately. Have a dream about being in a mine, throwing up blood. Wake up desperately needing a piss. The bathroom is an outhouse about 300 feet from the bunkhouse, and you could see the cemetery from the path. Throw it on my pants and grab a flashlight. Head out towards the outhouse and see a faint light over near the graveyard. I know there's nobody else up at this hour, so brain says ghost. Decide to piss on the side of the bunkhouse instead of the outhouse. Walk into the shadows and begin pissing. Light is getting brighter in the meantime. Hear scratching from the bushes behind me. Terrible choices, between ominous bushes and ghost light and me just trying to piss. Finish my piss and nope my ass back inside. Try to fall asleep, but have the blood vomit dream again. Next day, Hunter tells me he had the same dream as me. Ask the mate, and he says it's normal. Should stop in a few days. Had that dream every night I was there. More sailing stories. About a quarter of the way through the voyage, get woken up by the mother of all loud fucking noises. Asshole clench. Noise happens again, and I jump and slam my head on the bunk above mine. Only slept 2 hours last night. Figure out it's the ship's foghorn, which is mounted right next to my bunk. Awake now, so decide to get some coffee and figure out what's going on. Get up on the deck and immediately get soaked. It's pissing rain. Hell of a morning. Duck from the gangway into the galley. Run through the mess towards aft. Find the captain at the helm in a long raincoat, looking like a damn pirate. Captain, what the fuck? Morning and on. Wake the crew up. We're dropping sail, he yells. Check wind gauge. Wind speed is fucking 30 knots. Captain, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but what the fuck? Relax and on, it's gonna be fun. Wake crewmates and haul down. Finally raise the sails, and we shoot across the water like a bullet. I managed to vomit in my own face due to the wind. Turns out the storm was real fucking bad, and we needed a safe harbor. Captain spends most of the day in the mess, going over nearby ports we could dock at. Decides on this place in the middle of nowhere. Runs all the watches himself. We do a series of really complex tasks and eventually end up in this bay. There is only 2 or 3 lights I can see, but definitely the outline of a town. I get to work securing the sails, and this dude in foul weather gear motors up to the ship on a dinghy. He's got maybe 4 or 5 nets of mussels. Asks me to find the captain. Captain is passed out, so grab the first mate. He asks her if she likes mussels. Mate says fuck yes. Guy chucks a net full of mussels onto the deck. Hands her a business card and says to call if we need anything. Motors off back towards the house that's standing alone on a hillside. Mate calls me over. Anon, look at this. Card is for the town's municipal services. Card has phone numbers for police, fire, and an ambulance company, and the mayor's number. Everything but the mayor's number is crossed out. Exchange looks with the first mate. She tries to ask the muscle guy if he's the mayor, but he is already gone. All this while it's still pouring rain. Cook tests the mussels. Seem good. We eat mussels for the next week. Hate them things now. Weirdest part is that when we went back to catalog our course, we figured out whoever took the bearings in that bay fucked up. No idea where we were. Captain looks for the card. Finds it, but all the ink has run off. Totally unreadable. I've tried to figure out where it was for years. Could not find it. Even asked a shipmate about it. She didn't remember the place.